We would now like to actually understand the basic details of the very first module, which relates to the fundamentals of managerial economics. We could look at managerial economics as the study of the relationship between the firm and the economy. First and foremost, we must understand that managers need to know about economics in two ways. First of all, they must understand something about the basics which belong to the basic units in the economy. That is, the individual producer, the individual consumer, one unit of labor, one unit of land, and so on. At this level, the study is involving the question of choice, and choice is the most fundamental question in economics and particularly in microeconomics. That is why when we talk about choice, then we are concerned with relative prices. For instance, if we talk about commodity prices, which we typically signify as PX, okay. So commodity prices are actually relative prices, because when we think about the price of an individual commodity, it always involves a choice whereby the individual has to choose between commodity X and commodity Y. Therefore, in the context of microeconomics, relative price would, whether it is stated explicitly or not, relative price or any price that is referred to in microeconomics is a relative price. Even if we talk about wage rate, because it relates to one unit of labor, it would mean that I have a choice as a producer to employ one unit of labor or an additional unit of labor or some other factor of production. Therefore, the price of labor is in relation to the price of capital. So therefore, even if we call it wage, it actually implies wage rate. So therefore, whatever factor of production we consider, whichever factor of production we consider, the price is always indicative of a relative price. However, we said in the beginning that managerial economics is about the relationship between the firm and the economy. Therefore, at another level, the manager has to understand about the economy at the aggregate level. And here, macroeconomic theory, as we call it, deals with aggregates. The aggregates which are very familiar to us are national income, now aggregate consumption, aggregate investment, aggregate savings. So, when it comes to macroeconomics, I could simply ignore the word aggregate and just say savings, consumption or income. It automatically means that we are talking about aggregate income, aggregate consumption or aggregate savings. Then apart from this, we have already understood that managerial economics is a part of, or it is one kind of applied economics. Therefore, because it is not just pure economics, it is applied economics, therefore, the manager has to be aware of the policy aspects. Now, what are the major policies? Fiscal policy and monetary policy. Therefore, a manager who is managing a firm has to be aware about both microeconomics and macroeconomics. Each firm is set in the context of the economy. One question which arises in this context is also the business conditions that prevail. These business conditions are going to affect our understanding of what we are calling managerial economics. there are both macroeconomic conditions, and in accordance with these macroeconomic conditions, there are macroeconomic policies. Now, we shall in this context discuss some of the fundamental economic concepts. These concepts are essential for understanding some of the basic notions in economics. The student needs to be familiar about certain fundamental concepts, that is scarcity, factors of production, difference between needs and wants, basic economic problems of any economy. As we are aware, there are three basic economic problems of each economy. And then there are some notions like opportunity cost, marginal analysis, production possibility, frontier, and so on.
Studying this module, we shall be able to understand the basis of studying managerial economics, learn the fundamental economic concepts, know the basic questions or problems faced by every economy, and evaluate the concept of scarcity with the help of production possibility frontier.
We are familiar with terms like economics. We are also familiar with terms like management. But when it comes to something like managerial economics, often we get a bit confused. So let us start from the beginning. Management is the science of decision making. Economics is the science of resource allocation. Normally, in economics, the entrepreneur is all in all. The entrepreneur undertakes all economic decisions. What are these decisions? Investing decision, that is how much and where to invest. Undertaking risk, because any entrepreneur has to undertake some economic activity which invariably involves risk. And for carrying out the economic activity, the entrepreneur has to employ factors of production, which we all know are land, labor, and capital. Then these factors of production don't work in isolation. Therefore, the factors of production have to be coordinated. And after coordinating the factors of production, then the product which emerges has to be sold. Therefore, selling is another economic decision. Finally, the value added which is generated out of such economic activity is to be distributed amongst different factors of production. So, can you imagine that an entrepreneur has to carry out all these tasks? And however, in recent times, there is a change in the organizational structure. Commonly, we call the entity a firm, but in recent times, the new organizational structure has become that of a joint stock company. In a joint stock company, we have managers who are not owners, and on the other hand, we have entrepreneurs or owners who themselves do not manage. So, we have non-owner managers and non-managing owners. Now, this leads to a situation where the functions are carried out jointly by the entrepreneurs as well as the managers. The managers carry out many of the economic decisions like production and distribution, and when this is done, the manager should be aware about the basic principles of microeconomics. Thus, one part of managerial economics obviously relates to the economics of production. Here, production, mind you, implies production of goods as well as services. In the modern economy, firms are no longer isolated. It is not like the village economy. Okay. So, in the new environment, there is a business environment in which firms are located, and this business environment is related to the rest of the economy. Very often, the firms are also directly related to the international economy. So, can you imagine the role and the task that a manager has to undertake? It is not only about undertaking certain economic decisions about production and distribution, but they should also be aware of what the economy is and what the international economy is all about. Thus, the second part of managerial economics relates to the economy. In other words, the first part relates to microeconomics and the second part relates to macroeconomics. In microeconomics, the manager studies uh, the smallest unit, like 1 unit of labor or 1 unit of capital or 1 unit of land and so on. In macroeconomics, on the other hand, the manager would be concerned with national income, consumption, savings, government expenditure and so on. Furthermore, a manager is answerable, as we just said, that there is a diversion, there is a separation between ownership and control. Therefore, a manager is answerable to the entrepreneur. So, she should understand how to measure things, because the manager has to report to the owners. Therefore, measurement is important. For instance, a manager should know how to measure and forecast demand. Uh, Finally, in the context of the economy, the manager also faces many policy regulations which affect the firm in different ways. So, she must also understand economic policies. What are these policies? Fiscal policy, monetary policy. Some of these policies we will be understanding as we go along. So, while the manager is responsible for some decisions, the owners may be responsible for other decisions. Once again, managers are responsible for many other decisions, such as financial decisions, marketing decisions, HR decisions and so on. So, please remember that all decisions that a manager undertakes does not come within the purview of managerial economics. Therefore, managerial economics is the study of the principles of micro and macroeconomics along with the economic policy that surrounds the firm. Since managerial economics relates to the practical parts or aspects as well, therefore, we could say that managerial economics is applied economics. Okay? We could have other kinds of applied economics as well. For example, environmental economics. It is that part of economics which relates to and applies to the environment. So, managerial economics, I reiterate, is applied economics. In this sense, it also involves measurement as well as the policy aspects.
Context, scarcity refers to the limited resources. These resources are the inputs of production: land, labor, and capital. The basic economic problem arises because people and society have unlimited wants, but resources of the economy are limited. And thus, the various economic decisions must be made to ensure efficient allocation of resources. These decisions basically involve giving up or trading off one want to satisfy another. Thus, the economy has to choose the way it uses its resources. In economics, factors of production are what is utilized in the production process in order to produce output, that is, finished goods. The amounts of the various inputs used determine the quantity of output according to a relationship called the production function. The inputs of production or factors of production refers to the various inputs used in the production of goods or services by the firm to earn economic profit. The factors of production include land, labor, capital, and the entrepreneur. Land. It represents all natural resources available. Land is usually a limited resource for many economies. Although some natural resources, such as timber, food, and animals, are renewable, the physical land is usually a fixed resource. Nations must carefully use their land resource by creating a mix of natural and industrial uses. Using land for industrial purposes allows nations to improve the production processes for turning natural resources into consumer goods, such as timber, soil, crops, minerals, forests, rivers, etc., that are used in the production of consumer goods. Labor. Labor comprises of the work done by the laborers and workers at all levels of an organization. This excludes the entrepreneur or owner. This factor of production is a flexible resource as workers can be allocated to different areas of the economy for producing consumer goods or services. Human capital can also be improved through training or educating the workers to complete technical functions or business tasks when working with other economic resources. Capital. It refers to all the man made physical goods used to produce other goods and services like building, machines, equipment, computers, tools, factories, roads, etc. It also refers to the monetary resources that the company uses to purchase land and other capital goods. The increase in the level of capital is referred to as investment. The accumulation of investment leads to the creation of capital stock. It is the flow of capital services from this capital stock that leads to production. Entrepreneur is the individual, commonly referred to as the owner or producer, who takes up an idea, uses special skills to produce goods and services, and attempts to earn economic profit by combining all other factors of production. All the risks and rewards of the business belong to the entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs combine the other factors of production, land, labor, and capital, in order to make a profit. Often, these entrepreneurs are seen as innovators, developing new ways to produce and new products. In a planned economy, central planners decide how land, labor, and capital should be used to provide for maximum benefit to all citizens. Needs refer to the various goods or services that are required by people. This would include the needs for food, clothing, shelter, and health care. Wants, on the other hand, refers to the goods or services that are not necessary but that we desire or wish for. For example, luxurious cars, designer clothing, furnished houses. An important decision involved in economics is the allocation of resources for the production of goods so that people's needs are met, given the scarce resources. The process of satisfying needs and wants involves three steps, that is, production, distribution, and consumption. Production refers to the process of combining all factors of production for generating goods and services. Once the goods and services are produced, the firm attempts to distribute them in the market so that consumers can avail or consume these goods and services in exchange for a price, which leads to a firm's revenue. As discussed earlier in this module, every economy has limited or scarce resources, but the wants and desires are unlimited. Thus, every economy has to make choices and ensure the optimum allocation of resources. All economies face three basic choices or questions that must be answered for an economy to work efficiently. This is irrespective of whether the economy is a market economy, a planned economy, or a mixed economy. The three central problems are what to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce. What to produce? In microeconomics, we study the problems of choice. The first choice that a firm needs to answer is what needs and wants of the society it should satisfy given the limited resources. It can choose either to produce consumer goods like food, clothing, etc., or produce capital goods like machinery, tools, equipment, etc. This choice is made with the help of the price of each commodity with respect to the other. If the demand for commodity X is more, then the price of X would be more. The price ratio will tilt in favor of X against commodity Y. This would attract producers to produce more of the commodity X. This is how the question of what to produce is solved. The pricing in the product market helps to solve the problem. How to produce? Goods can be produced by certain techniques, labor intensive technique, and capital intensive technique. The firm needs to opt for the best method of production. Labor intensive technique refers to the one in which more of labor combines with less of capital for the production of goods and services. Capital intensive technique is one in which more of machinery like forklift, assembly belts, computers, etc., are used to combine with less of labor to produce goods and services. Even services need capital to complement their productive ability. For instance, a postman provides a service, but he too uses a bicycle, which is capital. You get the message even through email, but the capital used for such a service is much more. Depending on the cost of employing capital versus labor, the producer will decide how to produce with the help of more capital or more labor. If more of labor is available, then the price of labor or the wage rate will be lower than the price of capital or the rate of interest. The factor price ratio, that is PL oblique PK, will tilt in favor of labor. Thus, the question of how to produce is also solved by the price mechanism. Only in this case, it is the factor market which solves the problem. For whom to produce? Once the price mechanism helps decide the earlier two questions, then the total quantity to be produced and its price is determined. Therefore, the value of the produce is determined, that is, P into Q. The question of for whom to produce needs to be understood well. In fact, the question needs to be inverted. The real question is who produces? Is production of goods and services exclusively due to labor, capital, or land, or is it the entrepreneur who is responsible for production? The product, that is, its value, needs to be divided amongst all the factors of production because they are all jointly responsible for the product. This question, therefore, really is one of distribution of the value amongst land, labor, capital, and the entrepreneur as rent, wages, interest, and profit. Every time a manager takes a decision on the above mentioned basic economic questions, he or she makes a choice between the various available alternatives. The cost of producing one good is felt as the amount of the foregone commodity. Economists use the term opportunity cost to explain the same phenomenon. Opportunity cost can be defined as the value of the next best alternative foregone. Whenever a choice or a decision is made between several possible alternatives with the given set of resources. In other words, it is the cost of an alternative course of action that is foregone to pursue a certain action. Assume you have rupees 500 to be spent on dinner. The opportunity cost of the money in this case is all the possible things you could have purchased or availed with the same amount of money. You could have bought some clothing or accessories. You could have gone to a saloon to avail some service or pay the registration fee at some fitness center. If resources are diverted for the production of a commodity Y in lieu of another commodity X, the opportunity cost of producing Y is measured in terms of X. Opportunity cost is equal to delta Y
divided by
delta X. If 3 units of Y can be produced by giving up 2 units of X, then the opportunity cost will be given by 3
divided by
2, that is 1.5. Production Possibility Frontier, PPF, also referred to as Production Possibility Curve, is a graph that represents the production trade off, that is, the choice of production between products given the scarce resources. The PP frontier graphically demonstrates the problem of scarcity, choice, and opportunity cost. For the simplicity of understanding the concept, we make the following assumptions. Resources available with the economy or firm are fixed. With the given resources, the firm only produces two commodities. The resources can be shifted or transferred to produce more or less of one commodity in exchange of another. The firm or the economy uses all the available resources. Given the assumption, production possibility frontier is a graph that depicts the various combinations of amounts of two commodities that an economy or firm can produce using the fixed amount of resources, that is, factors of production. To understand the concept further, let us consider one example. Production Possibility Schedule is a table that shows the various amounts of the two commodities that the economy or firm can produce given the scarce resources. Let us consider that with the given amount or quantity of factors of production, the economy or the firm chooses to produce either televisions or laptops as shown in the table. Let us depict production of laptops on the x-axis and the production of televisions on the y-axis. The table depicts that with the given factors of production, if the economy chooses to produce 400 units of televisions, it shall not be able to produce any unit of laptop shown as production possibility A. Similarly, production possibility E depicts that the economy or firm chooses to exploit all resources towards the production of laptops, and thus it produces 800 units of laptops and 0 units of televisions. Between the two ends of the production possibility schedule, there are other alternatives available, that is, production possibility B, C, and D. As we move down from point A to point E, we say that the resources are getting exchanged. That is, at point A, the economy or firm is producing 400 units of televisions and 0 units of laptops. As it moves down the PP frontier and reaches point B, the economy or firm produces 300 units of television and 200 units of laptops. Thus, we see that in moving from point A to point B, the economy exchanges or foregoes 100 units of television to produce 200 units of laptops. And likewise, throughout the PP frontier, we see that resources are exchanged or transferred to produce more or less of one commodity in exchange for another. Given our assumptions that the economy has limited resources, a production possibility point X showing the production of 300 units of televisions and 600 units of laptops is impossible to achieve. Any point above the curve is not viable as the economy lacks resources. Also, any point under the curve Like at production possibility point Y, the economy is only producing 200 units each of televisions and laptops and shows that the economy has not fully utilized its resources, which again violates the assumption that the economy should utilize all its resources and there shall be no leftover. Let us now recapitulate what we have learned in this module. There are four factors of production: land, labor, capital, and the entrepreneur. Scarcity of resources leads to the problem of what to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce. Opportunity cost is the value of the next best alternative foregone. Production possibility frontier represents the production trade off, that is, the choice of production between products given the scarce resources.